Hello guys and girls, it's IPSC Hags here with a quick video to show you the new Spectra from KMR. This is a production gun, a production optics gun, and a standard gun, although they do make the Spectra, which is this, and the Orca, which is predominantly for standard gun, the Umbra, which is a 4.5-inch version of this gun. This is a 5-inch, full 5-inch model, and the Amic, which is the open gun. They make a 22 as well, and a 6-inch, which is not for IPSC or USPSA. Really, really nice guns. So in this video, we're just going to take the gun apart and see the differences between the Spectra and the Shadow 2. Now, KMR is not a new brand or manufacturer. They've been manufacturing all the CZ orange models for a number of years, and they've recently entered the market within the last 12 months and manufactured their own range of sporting pistols. Now, with their experience, they've managed to produce a firearm that is incredibly well put together. The tolerances are extremely tight. There is absolutely no movement in that slide to frame fit. There's no movement in the barrel to slide fit. It is really solid and really, really tight. So, no magazine, no ammunition. Let's take the gun apart and have a look at the individual pieces and see how they compare to the Shadow 2 and what's different. We'll start with the grips. Now already here there is a little bit of a difference. So these grips, or the Shadow 2 grips, won't fit the KMR. What they've done to try and minimize the width of the grip on the gun is to recess the grip panels into the frame. So there is a section here that is milled out into the frame, and the grip panel fits in flush. So as you can see along the bottom where the magwell is, there is no protrusion of the grip all the way along the leading edge, and the top, it is on the inside of the frame, flush. At the back, it sits on top, but in the front, it's flush. So that minimizes the width. Obviously, as the aftermarket parts come to market for this gun, there'll be a lot of other options. KMR do have a palm swell version of this grip, but I really like the flats, and these are really great. So that is. Let's take off the other side and get to the internals. What we see on the inside of the grip is there's no magazine brake. Now the magazine brake is that metal plate that sits on the inside of the Shadow 1 and the Shadow 2, and it's designed to be bent to put friction on the magazine when you eject it. In IDPA, for example, they don't want the magazine hitting the floor, especially when there's ammo in it, and the magazine brake slows it down. Now in our sporting pistols for IPSC and USPSA, we want the magazine to be released freely, and the Shadow 2 and Shadow 1 does that, but we don't have to deal with the plate in this gun. It's been eliminated completely. So where there used to be a pin at the top of the frame here to push the pin out to release that plate, we don't have one in this gun. There is a channel in the back of the frame for the mainspring to go in and the mainspring plug. And we'll just take that slide off and I'll show you what else is different. Whilst we've got the slide stop in our hands, we can talk about that. So a number of occasions in the past and recently, I've noticed people having malfunctions when they shoot in training or in a match. And when the gun doesn't have an issue with the extractor or something like that, it tends to be the people with a high grip. They, under recoil, they push up on that slide stop. Because it protrudes quite a lot on the Shadow 2 and the Shadow 1 with the factory slide stop, it's quite a fat slide stop. And under recoil, you can push that up with the palm of your weak hand and it'll lock the slide back. On the KMR, they've got a very small, pretty flat slide stop, which does not get in the way of a very high grip. Whilst we're on the subject of high grips and things getting in the way, most of us that shoot the Shadow 2 shoot it with flat safeties for that very reason. With the Shadow 2, I can't use a wide safety because my high grip with my finger over the trigger guard, the safety gets in the way of my grip and I cannot grip the gun properly. So we put the flat safeties on. But with the KMR, it seems to be quite a bit higher and a little bit of a different shape. It is a bit wider as well, and this is a factory standard gun. Comes out with the wide on the left. I can get my weak hand really high and I'm still not affected by that safety being there. So I can use this safety in competition without it affecting my grip, and I really, really like that. So for the first time in production optics to be exact, I'll be running the wide safety because it doesn't interfere with my grip. Let's get that slide off and continue with the frame. Now, I don't have a micrometer with me or a vernier, so we can measure the sear cage and see if it's the same as the Shadow 2. But right here, we've got a competition hammer. So the Shadow 2 doesn't come out with a competition hammer. And what this allows is a better, crisper trigger pull, especially in single action. And this is factory standard with the competition hammer. Let's go a little bit further in and remove that sear cage. Just got to lift the sear spring and we can wedge the safety out. It's really, really tight. As I say, the tolerances in these guns are exceptional. There we go. We get that safety out. See, it's a bit wider and a different shape to the Shadow 2. Fits really nicely. Now, something else that's very interesting here. This is something you only see on the TS models from CZ. In the back of the ejector block or the sear cage, there are two little springs. These are designed to take up any slack or any play there might be. There is no play in the fitting of this sear cage. But it's nice to see that KMR have included them in their models for production and production optics, because they really work well in the CZ TS models and the Checkmate. So be very, very careful when you remove your sear cage. When I've worked on people's guns, a lot of times these little springs are missing. So be careful when you take this cage out, you don't lose those two tiny little springs that pick up any tolerance differences there. Good to see that's been incorporated into the gun. Very nice. Whilst we're looking at the frame, we must mention that this frame is CNC machined from a solid block of steel. It's not a cast part. So that's a really good thing, because there have been issues with cast frames in the past, and this being machined from one piece of durable. The test will be time, and I'm sure it will pass with flying colors. Now, earlier we had said that there was no magazine break in this gun, which is nice. We don't have to deal with it. So to remove the mainspring and the mainspring plug, we just push that pin out as we would with the Shadow 2, and it all comes apart. Let's get the hammer out because we want to have a look at the disconnector. So to get the hammer out, we've got to remove the detent plunger. And on the left-hand side of the gun, it's the same as the Shadow 2. It's the detent plunger with the spring. On the right-hand side of the gun, we rotate the safety up to the vertical position, then it'll come out. And on that side, we also have a detent plunger, but this one doesn't have a spring. Same as the Shadow 2. Now we can get the hammer pin out. There we go. That's out. And we can push out the hammer pin. Now the hammer, the strut, and the disconnector will come out the firearm. A little bit of a different shape on the hammer strut. As I said, the hammer was a competition hammer. But what's nice to see is that they've included from the factory a competition disconnector. What that means is, some of you might know this disconnector as an aftermarket part as the 00 or the 02. And what that means of it, which generally is oversized, and it allows you to file it down to customize how much pre-travel you have in single action. That's custom from the factory. So you get that included with your pistol. and the pre-travel is really, really small on these guns. You don't have to worry about putting in a different disconnector. Now, there's something else that's very interesting here. On the Shadow 2, the pin that holds the trigger in with the trigger return spring is a roll pin. And once you drive that out to replace your trigger return spring or put a different trigger in, you have to put it back and you have to stake the ends so it doesn't fall out. On this gun, there seems to be a factory floating trigger pin. So we'll just push that out. That's how easy it comes out. Let's not lose the trigger return spring. There it is. And here's the pin. So basically what it is a solid piece of metal with the groove cut out in the center. And how it works, like the floating trigger pin, the aftermarket one for the CZ, your trigger return spring sits in the middle and holds the pin in place. That's all that holds it in, hence the name floating trigger pin. Nice to see that's included from the factory. So you can use this over and over again. There's no need to replace it and stake the ends to keep it in. It stays in with the help of the trigger return spring. Now we can remove the trigger bar, and that looks pretty nice. It's cleaned up in all the right places. The trigger seems to have a little bit less of a curve on it than the Shadow 2. I don't have a factory Shadow 2 trigger yet to show you. There is no screw in the top for pre-travel, but there is a screw in the back for over-travel, and the trigger is serrated in the center for better grip. Really nice finish on that. And on the inside of the frame, we've still got the screw that holds in the trigger lifter spring and the mag release spring. Very nicely finished and clean. The mag release button is a little different to the Shadow 2. It's narrower and it doesn't seem to interfere as much with the weak hand grip. And it seems to be adjustable in 3 positions too, but it is smaller in profile, and I don't have an issue reaching it with my fairly small hands. I shot the gun for the first time today and had no issues with reloads, but I also didn't have that mark in the palm of my hand from where the safety is pressing in. I have seen people activate match. That's really, really good. So far, really impressive. Let's have a look at the slide. The slide comes like this from the factory. Polished, clean, looks really, really nice. We remove the recoil spring. The factory says to use a shock buff on these guns, so I will be doing that because I generally run very light springs. Stainless steel guide rod. There's a spacer plug in here that's made out of aluminium, which is really nice, similar to the TS, but the TS is plastic. And we have the barrel. Now that's a polished bull barrel, fluted from the factory. It's a different locking mechanism to the Shadow 1 and Shadow 2. It's a single locking mechanism, but it's beautiful and it's solid and it puts the weight in all the right places. This is static weight, so it helps with your recoil management. Really nice. Polished from the factory on the ramp and fitted really, really tight. Now, what makes this work very, very well is the bushing that the slide has. Now, with a normal bushing, you generally have it pinned in with the front sight. So the front sight pin holds in the bushing and the front sight. On this gun, we have a screw holding the front sight in because there's no need for a pin, because the bushing is a brass ring. And this is how easy it is to get out. Done. Looks like a wedding ring. So this is your bushing that your barrel works through. Now this is a self-centering bushing. It's called a BRS, Barrel Stabilization System. And after 15, 20,000 rounds, 10,000 rounds, if you feel that the tolerance there's got a bit loose, you simply remove it and replace it. It's not an expensive part, and it prevents any barrel to bushing wear because the brass is softer than the steel. So it's really nice and very easy to put back in. It's self-centering, so to drop it back in, you just drop it in, rotate it, and it's in position. This is what gives this firearm the extremely good accuracy that it has, and the ability to be able to just pluck it out and replace it is amazing. I really, really like that. As we said, the barrel to slide fit is exceptionally good. There's absolutely no movement in it. And the fit to the slide of the frame is really, really good. I'm wiggling that frame and there's no wiggle left to right, and there's no movement up or down. Nothing at all. I've got friends that have had these guns since last year and there's still no movement in the fit. So really, really good fit. Very smooth. This firearm, as well as some of the others that they manufacture, comes optics ready. So you don't have to choose between a standard gun with no optics ready and one with optics ready. 2 screws and that plate comes out. As I said, the front sight has got a grub screw in it, and that makes it easy to replace your front sight. I'm not sure if there's anything else we need to cover. Those are the main differences, and the gun shoots extremely well. The engagement is 5% less recoil than the Shadow 2, and very understandable with a bull barrel like that. One more thing we can look at. Let's take the firing pin out and see what we've got in there. Okay, so it's a different firing pin to the Shadow 2. Definitely, I can see that. I don't have a vernier with me to measure it, but it definitely looks like an extra long firing pin. And the spring for the firing pin is definitely what we know as a competition firing pin spring. In other words, it's lighter than what you get in the factory stock Shadow 2. I hope that's been interesting for you. Any questions you might have on this firearm and how they perform and how they work, please shoot away. And if there's anything I don't know, I'll do my best to find out for you. Thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.